Chapter 3. The Planning Board. The Howard County Planning Board takes into consideration the 700-page plan along with thousands of citizen comments. In less than a half hour, the board votes to add more housing density and retain recommendations to scale back adequate public facilities ordinance protections.
There was a lot of good input tonight. Can I have a motion to go into work session?
I move we go into work session.
Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're in work session. Wilbur, you want to start? No? Kevin, do you want to start? I'm going to start at one or the other so I can keep track. I mean, from what I see, it's pretty clear. We need to drastically increase the housing units and not develop any more.
Yes.
So just solve those two problems and we're done.
I think you read the room very, very well.
Please, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. Took lots of notes, lots of information. It was very, very thorough as far as the organization of the project, the plan. Everything that was possibly, that could possibly be addressed was addressed. I did hear the school section, it was addressed, but folks have said they didn't feel it was enough, that they need to go further. I definitely heard lots of comments about the PSA, and it seems like it's still the same comments back and forth that you should expand and move out into Western Howard. However, there's all the costs that are involved. So we heard both sides of that consideration today. Go ahead and start building houses out there, but then how much does it cost the county to actually sustain those places? That argument hasn't changed. ADUs, we heard lots and lots of information about the accessory dwelling units. We heard a lot of missing middle. We heard both sides of it. Everyone is right on target as far as we need additional housing. It's just the agreement of what number to put into the plan to make it worthwhile. Some say 2,000, plan says 1,580. We go back and forth. Does that number need to be increased? What do we recommend to the county as far as a number in the plan? Also heard, let's see, Route 1 corridor plan. Everyone recognizes that we absolutely must keep light industrial there. There was a few things that were mentioned that were, it didn't seem like anyone had a major concern about Route 1. Did hear Gateway mentioned a few times. It truly sounds like at this point in time, schools was the biggest concern. Second biggest, biggest concern was housing and the number of units. I think at this point in time, if we're able to increase, wait a minute, we're not in work session, are we?
Yes, we are.
We are in work session? I made the motion, okay. So I go ahead and say it now. I do feel that we need to address that concern. If there's that many individuals, and we've received a lot, as far as the audience is concerned, we've received a lot of feedback and long segments of information. And so I thank everyone in the public that took the time and the initiative to send that information in, because it was sent in early enough. We were able to read it, digest it, and it matches point on point for what you said here today. So thank you very, very much for that. I think we should address something in the plan, at least in our recommendation, that says there should be another review of how we look at the housing piece in here as far as the numbers are concerned. I'm not skilled enough to know exactly what the number is, but we have all these incredible individuals here that are concerned that They had this massive housing plan that they put together, and then they don't feel that they were listened to. If there's a readdress of that, that's great. Let's see, what else? The housing affordability, if there's a way to bring that down. We had one lady that just talked to us at the very, very end, and she was against creating more housing. I know we're going to get that more and more, but tonight I heard the majority of the folks here in this room and the information that we received, everyone wanted more housing. They recognized that we absolutely have to be concerned about the people that work here in the county not being able to afford to live here. They work here, they have to go to other counties. We see and hear about it all the time during the regular planning board year. I think if there's another way to address it, and Ms. Ng, she brought some things up, and Mr. Ng, they both brought up great points. If there's a way that we can address it here tonight and give recommendations to the council, that's fantastic. I'm going to leave the rest of this to somebody else. Let you guys take it from here. Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara?
I think my big takeaway from all of the testimony, particularly reviewing some of the written testimony provided by email, which a lot of it obviously was reiterated, that the idea that the housing allocation table is below what the plan itself says the shortfall is does seem, it seems like something that needs a second look in terms of, I agree with that. The schools issue, it seems like is a lot more complicated. And in theory, would it hopefully, I mean, the next step after this is a whole effort on AMFO specifically with schools. So I'm not sure what would go into this plan that could address the specifics of that, because it's not like this plan is going to say the mitigation number needs to go up by X and this number needs to go up by Y, and like this plan isn't going to say that, and it doesn't say it now. I'm not sure that there's really anything that we would recommend that would address a lot of the concerns we heard.
Thank you. James?
So I'm trying to consolidate notes. I mean, it's tough because there's the affordable housing, needing more housing, but then that directly impacts school capacity and schools. It's why, last week I was kind of worked up of units are not going to be in the pipeline. They cannot address the lack of affordable housing, and units built exempt from that are going to make that hill even taller as we look towards the general plan. I think to your point of looking to raise the cap of units, I think actions need to have like corresponding actions of how we're doing that. If we're increasing units, I think the recommendation of a specific commitment to what percentage are affordable. I think, most right now are in that 10 to 15% range, depending on the project or the area. Based off of 2,000 units and looking at 500, I would look at a 25% goal for affordable housing units. But I don't want to set I like the percentage option, because if there is a year where we don't hit 2,000, we're not sacrificing the affordable units to just build 1,500, market rate units. So again, if we look to raise the cap, I think you raise the requirement for affordable housing. And I think along the housing side, looking at some of the recommendations, from the Housing Opportunities Task Force, building some of those in, especially around, the concentrations of poverty, where again, the concentration of units is in a place where it's already concentrated. The note that I made was, it's modern day redlining if those units can only be built in the same place. And then when we look at the school side, schools are not mitigating the impacts of previous redlining, and nobody wants them to do that either. And so we create it, don't fix it, and I think we see that cycle now, whether that's in availability of affordable housing, we see that in the way our schools are positioned right now. And so to address that together on the school side too, I just had really, just things that jumped out. The numbers in the report, I guess, were K through 12 instead of pre-K through 12. I think that pre-K number are students in the K through 12 schools, and so it impacts the capacity number for those schools. So I just think it's a consideration that if those programs weren't in those schools, those seats would be available for K through 12. And I think as we look towards expansion of pre-K, there's opportunities there. If those programs come out of schools, that does create capacity in schools. There's a lot there. I think overall more consistent. I know there's collaboration with the school system already, especially around enrollment projections and things like that. Making notes about data sets. I don't know how much would go into this. But there's a real issue, and we can't really wrestle with it on our side in terms of how to fund all of this. That's the multi-million-dollar question at this point of so many community priorities, whether it's affordable housing, but then also having the tools in place. But the document should be, again, that aspirational goal. And I think in terms of everything that's been poured into this, I'd like the document to track all the changes along the way. I think it helps highlight input. I saw Kevin, I was like, that was you. And there's a few others where it's like the same thing of we've heard it and it's in there. And so, it can't always be that for everybody, but I think it is that a lot of times. And so I do appreciate that, because I don't think any of us would be here if we didn't think it would change anything. And I think everybody here wants to see, the voice at least participate in the discussion, and whether that can lend itself to the final document, but at least when future decision makers are making their decisions, it's that conversation has started. So I appreciate that we've had that opportunity here, and overall, whether it makes it in the general plan document or not, this was multiple iterations before the council, and future opportunities to shape this. What was passed last time has been edited, revised, amended, overruled, all of those things. And so even if we can't address everything tonight, there's a lot of notes that may impact future decisions later. But those are kind of the main points that came to me. Thank you.
Thank you. For me, I think it's just trying to scope what this plan is versus it's not everything. It's not AFPO. It's not school districting. It's not that kind of stuff. And I find it frustrating that if we approved, if we were the ones that could approve this plan and we approved it tonight, it would be 8 years, probably conservatively, before a new unit, because of this plan, would actually come into the pipeline and would add a child to the school. So it seems you could tell the school district, hey, in 8 years, this is what we think is going to happen, and they would be flexible enough to be able to have planned for that in that time. And it's not like we don't have data. We know the house sales, we know the kids that are enrolled, we can make projections of how many people are moving to older neighborhoods as they turn over versus new housing types and what they generate. You give that information to the school district, and then nothing seems to happen. And I don't know if part of it is, and it's my understanding, is the way state law impacts building new schools might be characterized as not forward-looking. I've heard it characterized basically as you can't ask for a new school until the school is over, until the schools are already crowded. So everything I just previously said goes out the window. But with this county and knowing what the projections are, you have to assume that the school board is doing their due diligence and doing their work, and going to have to make some tough decisions with where new schools go and redistricting, and alleviate some of these problems that are outside of what this plan is. And for me, the other general concern is I think we're better served by dispersing things across different areas. But how they are received is going to depend on how they look and how they interact with the environment. And if you took a small cluster on a property and you subdivided that lot, but you made it look like it belonged in that neighborhood and had been built when that neighborhood was built up, there's probably much less resistance to something that looks like that than slapping something that would look like Wild Lakes Village Center in a residential zone, with the mixed use bricks and stuff. That's just going to get people upset. The end number of units and things like that would probably be the same, but the aesthetics of it, the setbacks, the buffering and other things, and how that all plays in with the existing built environment is going to be a key to how a lot of this gets accepted. And like in Gateway, from what we had heard last week, it sounds like there might have been lack of foresight in some of the amenities that were planned in Turf Valley. And it would be nice not to see those same mistakes made in Gateway. If actual housing and stuff goes there, that there is open space, that there is opportunities for people to play and connect. And the larger scope of that is integrate that with the rest of Columbia too. Much like today, Route 29 divides Columbia in half and is like a great wall where certain things only happen on one side and all other things happen on the other. Snowden Rivers is potentially that same thing. That's going to separate Gateway from that, and to integrate that with our community so that people can freely flow back and forth organically would help to make that a success. So overall, I appreciate all the work that went into it and the challenge that this is, and trying to scope what it is and all the inputs that you've taken. I think it's a pretty good job. So, I kind of agree. It sounds like there is a need to increase the housing units as a goal. But like you said, that's a goal and we're not meeting it now anyway. So, make it 50,000. How many did we build this year? Oh, we built 1,500. Okay, well, so let's move on. So that's how I feel about it. Anybody else? Seconds?
I am going to put it back out on the floor again. Public is looking at a different number than what's actually in the plan. For this to go beyond us tonight, are we adding that we want to see that number increased in our recommendation? Or are we just leaving that alone?
My question, I know there's lots of notes, and I know those notes go into action items. Like I said, I've seen notes from our previous sessions end up in the revised draft. So in terms of process, I guess, is it we've said it and that's considered, or is it if we made a formal recommendation that would tag along with this to the county council?
So I guess so the recommendations are all, sometimes look differently. I think that if you want something specifically recommended to council rather than just, this comment was mentioned, I think you should put it in your motion. So it's clear that it came from the board and not just an individual member making a comment.
Kevin, do you mind, were you thinking something similar for the increased units, or what did you have in mind?
So,
There was a number that was constantly mentioned, and it was from a housing plan committee that met prior to HOCO by Design coming into shape and form. And with that study and the HOCO by Design study, there's a variance. And so should we go with the number itself or the percentage, like James mentioned, in our recommendation? Increase the,
do we know the name of the study? that's
The
here?
Housing Opportunities Master Plan Task Force Report.
very
That
well.
would be her.
I don't take a lot of notes, but I can know what's going on.
So what I don't want to do is, I don't want to bog this process down with going back and rehashing numbers. If the numbers were looked at and it was considered, I'm just wondering why there is this variance. Do we know?
Between the numbers in our
Study
chart and the
and
housing
yours.
and the Housing Opportunities Master Plan. I don't know, I mean, a lot of this was based on like jobs housing ratio. And so I think there was just a different starting point in terms of like total jobs which then translated into how many housing units were gonna be needed to fill those jobs. And so I think we just started at a slightly different point. But, a
So
lot
to
of it
change your number, what's involved in that?
came from the consultant's analysis of how many jobs by targeting a certain amount of jobs, right? And saying if we want to have 40,000, 50, 60,000 jobs, then we need to have this many housing units to support those jobs. And then adding in whatever that undersupply is. So I think just some of those numbers were slightly different in the study that the Housing Opportunities Master Plan did. And then a year or so later, the consultants had just different numbers in our study. It's not that far off because they were at 2,000 a year as a target, basically. And we were targeting 1,700 a year.
Right.
And that's with the green neighborhood and the affordable housing which are bonus set aside categories.
So can we appease the public?
So,
I'm asking the question, but please.
no, what I was wondering is if the basic motion is that we recommend to the county council that they approve HOCO by Design, the planning board recommends that the housing allocation unit numbers be examined and adjusted to be closer to the,
Thing.
that's, you didn't remember, okay. What,
Turn the phone on.
I had it highlighted.
Is that housing something else?
Housing Opportunities Master
Thank
Plan.
That the housing allocations be looked and adjusted to be closer to incorporate that plan.
The
Which
hump.
I don't know why I can't remember
The
those
hump.
3 words altogether, but
Hump,
The hump?
hump, HOMP.
Oh,
Hump.
all right.
is that acceptable,
That's acceptable to me.
Yeah,
What
that's
about this?
fine. Yep.
James?
Yeah, I mean, I only pick specific because it just it gets lost if they interpret it differently later. But
I know you like the percentage piece. How
well,
do we?
my concern was that if you raise the cap, but somehow the same percentage carries over, then you're locked into 10 to 15% of 2,000 instead of that. So I just like the percentage. But that's aligned with that recommendation. Like the recommendation was 500 out of 2,000 units, if I remember correctly. Which I just said if that 2,000 ever changed, but I'm also fine if it's 500 as a baseline and 2,000 as a cap. But I don't know the best way to put that. But I just think with or would you say commitment to increase affordable housing, taking into consideration the hump? And as long as there's a commitment to increase affordable housing, however that carries into it, I'm all for it.
So you recommend that they increase the housing allocation unit with an emphasis on providing affordable housing in line with the recommendations of the hump.
Yeah, I can do that.
I second that.
Please don't ask me to say it again.
We have it recorded, right?
We have recorded.
I was gonna say.
Okay, I couldn't type
So
that
it's been
fast.
moved, it's been seconded.
You want to move on? Okay. All those in, you first, James second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Did you want to?
Yes, well, I'm done. Didn't have a motion. Do we have any other business?
Oh, yeah, I stood up.
No other business. The next meeting is not till April 11th
April 11th?
because, yeah,
Yeah, you finished tonight.
because we finished tonight.
Okay.
And I just want to say that farewell, and this will be my last meeting, I guess. So it's been a pleasure.
Thank you for watching this go through.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So you won't see through the council though?
I mean, I'll just watch from home. Yeah.
Just get the popcorn.
I just won't be in the hot seat. I get to watch from afar.
She's gonna hear all about it.
All right.
You can get together with Laura and have popcorn and martinis or whatever.
Yes,
Just find a
exactly.
watch along site somewhere.
Can I get a motion to adjourn? So we can
I
stop?
move we adjourn.
Second. We're adjourned.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.